Okay, officially, hello and welcome to this week's edition of Global Lawyers of Canada Virtual Mentor Office Hours. This week, as our mentor, we have Saeed Jawad Kader. Kader, there we go. I knew I'd butcher this somehow. A little introduction. My name is Siobhan Lennox. I'm a dual-called lawyer between England and Wales and BC. And I am the president of the BC chapter of Global Lawyers of Canada. I'm just here as the facilitator today, so I'm just here to help the conversation along, make sure that as many questions as possible get answered as we go through this, and you guys all come away feeling like you have learned something today. So a little bit about our mentor today. So Saeed is also a dual-called lawyer, although soon to be tri-called. Fingers crossed, in the not too distant future. He's also called in England and Wales and in Bangladesh. He has over 12 years of experience as a litigator, transactional lawyer, and law firm manager. He's kind of putting me to shame here a little bit. He completed his LLB and his PGDL at Cardiff University in Wales. He undertook mini pupillages in London and Cardiff. And he's a licensed advocate at the subordinate courts and the High Court Division of the Supreme Court of Bangladesh. That is a tongue twister in itself. And he's supposed to be sitting his exams in August for the remainder of his NCA exams. So he's going to be one of the guinea pigs of the first people doing the online exams, which some of you may be doing too. So you guys can all come back and tell me.
The mic's off. By the way, the mic's back on.
Sorry, that's my son. He gives me no privacy at all.
Well, why would they? That's what children are for, and spouses and animals and work colleagues. They just like to photo bomb us in the background. Okay, so on that, I'm going to hand over to you, Saeed. Do remember, if you do have any questions, pop them in the comment box. We will get to you as we go through. And once Saeed's done his official intro piece, we're going to open up the mic so you guys can ask your questions directly as well. Okay.
So should I go?
Over to you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think I don't need any more introduction than the one that you just gave me, but I am used to being called Jawad by my middle name, which is a bit strange around this part of the world, I understand. But I am new to Canada. I came in March, and I chose to requalify as a lawyer in Canada last August. I sat for my first batch of exams in October of last year. And I am thankful that I passed both. I am going to hopefully sit for the remaining 5 exams that I've been allotted sometime this year in August or in October. So with that being said, so I think what I'm going to begin with is basically describing some of the issues that are faced by subcontinental lawyers who choose to migrate over here and start a practice here. I know a few lawyers who have been in touch with from the subcontinent who have come here, and they've left behind absolutely thriving practices. And when they come here for reasons other than their careers, they are thrust into a position where they have to negotiate with this new turn in their careers, and they have to requalify, and it appears to them that they are taking a step backwards. But that can cause a lot of anguish, a lot of depression, a lot of other mental health issues. I would say to all of you here, and especially to those from the subcontinent, that is actually not the case, and that is not probably the right way to think about it. I would think about it like it is a step forward in our careers, because Canada offers us an opportunity to practice in a more advanced legal system, in a more multicultural setting, and potentially with an opportunity to practice on briefs that are much higher profile than the briefs that we've handled back in our home jurisdictions. So this is the hope that has to underpin the journey of every subcontinental lawyer here, because if you constantly bog yourself down with negative thoughts, it can be a very frustrating ride, and it's not the correct way to think because it's not true. I know that a lot of questions have come to me and to you, Shubham, about the NCA process and the requalification process. So I am basically going to talk a bit about the NCA process and what it is. I'm going to um, try to bust some myths, and we'll also talk about some of the journeys that I've seen other lawyers take, as well as my own journey in this field. So, what is the NCA? The NCA is essentially an alternative pathway towards requalifying as a. It's part of an alternative pathway towards requalifying as a lawyer in Canada. What we have to firstly know is that Canada is divided into different provinces, and each province has its own bar. Each province has its own law society, as it's called here. And the NCA essentially is, the NCA process is for internationally qualified lawyers who have a degree that is not recognized by the NCA or the Federation of Law Societies of Canada to be a qualifying law degree. So the first step is to ensure that our law degrees, the ones that we have under our belt, are brought to an equivalent standard with the Canadian law degree. And that is what the NCA process is all about. So at the end of the NCA process, you get a certificate of qualification, which essentially attests to the fact that you are now of an equal level of competency as that of a JD degree holder, essentially. So the NCA is how the process starts is, and here I'm going to bust a myth here. A lot of people think that you have to be in Canada to start the NCA process. That is not true. You can be anywhere in the world, and it is a very remote, it's a very online experience. You can go to the website, you can basically send over your certificates for an assessment, and after that is assessed, the NCA will give you a certificate of assessment, whereas they'll tell you what you need to do to bring your degree to that, to earn your certificate of qualification, essentially. So when I did mine, I was told to take 7 subjects on a self-study basis. And those 7 subjects included the 5 staple subjects that everyone is prescribed by the NCA, which is foundations, constitution, admin, criminal, and what is the 5th one? Professional responsibility, right? That's the one that I passed, yes. So, yes, so I think the most, once you have your qualifications assessed and you have been told what to do, the most useful way to go about it would be to open up the syllabus, which is available on the NCA website. And once you do that, that syllabus for that subject will act as your Bible for the entire subject, because that syllabus is going to guide you through to what you need to do and what you need to study and what you need to focus on and what warnings you need to heed in preparing for those exams. These exams, I did not find these exams to be extremely difficult. They are intense in that they are intensive 3-hour open book exams, and timing is a factor. You need to be conscious of the time. You cannot be spending too much time on any question that doesn't carry that much marks. But at the end of the day, it's not a very difficult exam to pass if you are familiar and are comfortable with the material that you have been assigned to study. And the questions are tricky. They have been designed to make the examinee stumble and trip. But if you are comfortable with the material, that's I don't think that should be a problem. One other thing that I have to mention here is that I touched upon this a little earlier. that a lot of the questions that I get is if this is a part of the immigration scheme, because a lot of the lawyers who get introduced to the NCA process, they are still back in their home jurisdictions in the subcontinent or elsewhere around the world. This is not a part of the NCA process. And yes, one of the questions that I had was whether you can qualify as, you can immigrate as a lawyer here. I think he tried to imply that you have to qualify as a lawyer of Canada before making the application to migrate, but that is not the case. These are entirely two different processes altogether. And your immigration process, if you do choose to migrate on the basis of your, on the strength of your, of you being a lawyer, then you are making that application on the basis of you being a lawyer in your home jurisdiction, not in Canada. So you can come here and then you can start your qualification process, or you can, even before you make your application to migrate, you can start the process. You can start the NCA process. You can sit for the exams. Before August is going to be the first time that the exams are going to be held online. But before that, all the other exams were held in person, in an invigilated setting. And there were places, there were designated places all around the world, where you could actually sit for the exams. For example, in the subcontinent, there is a center in New Delhi. And I gave my exam from New Delhi. And, I know that there is a center in London, there is a center in South Africa. There are centers scattered all over the world. You have to contact the NCA to get the full detail about that. There is no language qualification for the NCA. You just need to submit your the certifications that you have, the academic qualifications that you have, and you will get your assessment based on that. I don't think you do not need any extra language qualifications like the IELTS. NCA, another thing is that there are, if you go to the NCA website, you will see that it mentions a few courses that you can do that will aid you in the NCA process. Now, this is a pathway that I am not very familiar with, but what I can tell you is that I have gotten this question, that if you can be, which one's the better way? Should I do an LLM or should I do the NCA? What should be the best way for me to go forward with this? I would advise anyone to, firstly, it's an intensely personal question, but I think that it depends on how you look at both these options, because the NCA, if you have been assigned to do, to sit for the exams on a self-study basis, then it does not afford you with an opportunity to network. Essentially, you're on your own. But in an LLM program, you do have the opportunity to network. And that is a very important thing that I'm going to talk about a bit more later on. But you do have the opportunity to network on a regular basis with people who are going to one day occupy positions that you want to know people in, So that is an opportunity that is afforded by the LLM process. And if you are looking to network, then that should be foremost in your mind. But having said so, the LLM process is expensive. You have to, in a lot of the cases, be in Canada. And it has, if you're working, you would have to juggle with your work and LLM. So that can be a bit of an inconvenience to some. So it is, at the end of the day, it is a personal choice, and you have to make that decision based on these considerations.
I think also, if you're thinking of doing an LLM, you need to think of why you're doing an LLM. Now, are you doing the LLM purely to meet the NCA requirements? That's fine, if that's how you want to do it. And as Jawad has said, there is the cost and the time involved with doing an LLM. But you also need to make sure that any LLM program you're doing has been first approved by the NCA. So you need to submit all of the documents around that LLM program, including which modules you're going to take, so which courses on the LLM you're going to take, and make sure that they actually meet your NCA requirements, because I know a few people who've applied, got onto an LLM program, gone through it, and then realized at the end of it that they still have to do NCA exams because the courses they took on the LLM didn't meet the actual NCA requirements. They're very specific, which means the LLM wasn't a waste, but it didn't meet the NCA requirements. They still had to do those on top. So there's an extra cost and time involved. So if you are going to do it, just double check with the NCA, just send them an email, send them all of the course details, and ask them beforehand. But as Jawad said, it's a very personal decision. And it may be that you want to do an LLM because you're looking to increase your specialty in a particular area. You know, if you have a particular interest, say, in intellectual property, and you haven't done that much intellectual property work in your original home jurisdiction, then maybe taking an LLM, like an intellectual property LLM, might be good because it's going to add to your resume, your CV in general. So it's just an extra thing to consider if you're thinking about LLMs. I didn't do one, so I can't talk about what they're like. I'm like Jawad, I just have to like go off other people's experience of them.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I think another point, important point that you touched upon is that you can actually contact the NCA with any questions that you have, and I think that is something that I don't see subcontinental lawyers doing much. What they resort to is that there are these Facebook pages that there are and these NCA groups on Facebook that you go to and throw in a question there. But that is not the right way to do it. You know, if you have a question, it's better to hear the answer from the horse's mouth. And it's better to just shoot them an email. They will respond to you. And that is something that happens here in Canada. You know, it's not like in the subcontinent, because in the subcontinent, a lot of the times, a lot of our emails go completely unresponded. And yeah, so that's something that you have to just do. Moving forward, I think a little needs to be said about how you are going to study for the NCA and how you are going to sit for the exams. You know, what process are you going to take? We've talked a bit about the LLM. Siobhan's points are all extremely important points. But if you do go for, if you do try to do it on a self-study basis, then there are many lawyers from the subcontinent who take the help of tutors. Now, tutors are there. It's not a regulated profession. Anybody can be a tutor. I can be a tutor. Anybody can be a tutor. So it's important to know who to go to, and it's important to know, who you are getting your advice from. And there are a few tutors who are advising in the process who are not lawyers in Canada and who have not even sat for their NCA exams. It's very important that you try to do a check and try to do your due diligence before you select your tutors. There are lots of notes that fly about as well. It's important that you purchase them. It's unethical for you to be sharing notes, because this is somebody else's intellectual property, and that needs to be respected. It is also illegal to be passing notes. It is, but you have to know, you have to see which notes you prefer the most. I would not suggest that you take in very voluminous notes. The reason for that is, although this is an open book exam, in the exam, you only have 3 hours, and you have to read everything and write everything in those 3 hours. So you will really not have the time to read through your notes. The best you can hope to achieve from these notes is for you to quickly point to the relevant section or the relevant material that you want to read in short, and then take your cue from there and then go back to your exam. So your note should not ideally be very very, very, very voluminous. And I would also stress upon the importance of making your own notes. Try to condense and try to prepare your own summary so that you know exactly what is where, and you can navigate through the material that you have in the exams. This is, I've so far talked about the NCA process. The NCA process is after you've passed your NCA exams, you get the certificate of qualification, but that is only step one amongst 3 steps. For you to qualify as a lawyer in Canada, generally speaking, although it differs from province to province, generally speaking, there are 3 steps. The first step is to get your certificate of qualification from the NCA. The second step is for you to get your articling experience, which comprises of the experiential part of your training. And the third step is to pass the bar exam of the province where you want to practice. So there are lots of questions on the articling process. And here is, I think this is a good segue for me to be talking about networking, because I cannot underscore this enough, that the importance of networking is often lost on lawyers who come from the subcontinent, because part of the experience of being a lawyer from the subcontinent who has just migrated to Canada is that you are in a foreign country, in a foreign land, perhaps even with language barriers, and you tend to huddle amongst your own, or people who speak your language, or who share a cultural identity with you. But although that is productive in itself, I would advise all lawyers, and particularly subcontinental lawyers, to venture out, get out of your comfort zone, and throw yourself out there, mingle with people. And the bigger your network is, you are essentially increasing your chances of stumbling upon an opportunity. Think about it like this. When you were practicing back home, you were, lawyers in the subcontinent do not generally advertise. The business that you got in the subcontinent was, almost all of them were from word of mouth. That word of mouth happened because of the people you knew, because of the people you served, because of the people who knew you. There is a trust element that must be established in any setting. The same rules apply here in Canada as well. For a lawyer to trust you with an articling position, they need to know that you are capable. They need to see you, know you, and get to see you for themselves. This is, if you just choose to throw in your resume and your cover letter, and if you mail in 100 applications like that, you are essentially just a piece of paper. But if they see you in person, they see you for who you are. And if somebody likes you, and there will be people who like you, that's just human nature. Somebody or the other will like you, will take a liking to you. And if an opportunity opens up, or he knows of an opportunity where he can act as a reference, then you can make use of that. And that is, I cannot stress on this enough. It's very important for you to network. And the more you network, the more your chances are of securing an articling position. And I say that unequivocally. It is not easy to get an articling position in Canada, especially in Ontario. It's the odds are stacked against everyone, whether you've come from abroad or whether you've qualified locally. The number of articling positions that are available at any given point in time is limited, and there is intense competition around those positions. So what lawyers are essentially, or what law firms are essentially looking for, is a person they can invest into who will be able to build a practice not only for themselves, but hopefully with that firm, so that the firm can get some business out of them as well. If you go into an articling position interview, or even if you make an application where you've made it quite apparent, that you have strong roots within the Canadian community, they will see, they will see, you will immediately cease to be an applicant. You will be a business proposition to them. That is what I think. And you will always be able to go to the interview and tell them that, hey, listen, I have a good reputation within this community. I have a solid grounding within this community. So I do know a lot of people who I think I can get work from. So at the end of the day, if you hire me, I will be able to bring work to the table of this firm. That is something that every firm would like to hear. There are a few other things that you can do to increase your chances or to put yourself in a better position to secure an articling position. The first thing, the first point is obviously networking, but the other things that you can do is that you can write. I think writing is it's a very good habit. And if you can manage to get a readership, and if you can manage to get a few of your writings published, then you stand a chance of putting forward a display of your work and what you're all about. Then your potential employer is going to be able to see firsthand the quality of your work, the quality of your thinking abilities, your acumen, and that is something that can help you in the process. It will definitely be appreciated by your network. There is, in Canada, I have seen this, and this is different from the subcontinent, at least in my experience. People read a lot here. They like reading. They like communicating through reading. So if you write something, it will be read. And if it is read, then you have a readership for yourself. So that's something that I'm going to definitely advise. Other things that you can do is you can network, or you can put yourself out there and try to get some work experience. You can try to volunteer in legal clinics. There are many community legal clinics in Canada. I've seen this, and this is something new for me because in Bangladesh there was no such thing. There are community legal clinics in Canada where you can, which basically functions as an access to justice point for those who cannot otherwise afford lawyers. So you can always go there and you can say, hey, I have such and such capabilities, I have such and such experience, I've worked in such and such background, do you need a hand? And although you might get people to say no, eventually somebody will say, yes, I do need a hand, because there's always work, right? So that's something that you can do. You can also go to the lawyer in your community, and you can say, you can volunteer to help him. And I know that, you won't be able to get through the doors of a lot of the lawyers, especially lawyers who work in big firms, perhaps, because they have access to their resources. But perhaps try to target lawyers who are solo practitioners or are running their own firm, a small boutique firm in your neighborhood, or in the high street even. Just tell them that, listen, I'm willing to volunteer. I'm willing to do anything that you will throw at me. I am willing to get this experience, and I'm just willing to help you. And someone might take you up on that, and you will get your foot through the door. It's important to get your foot through the door, because once you get that experience, when you put that in your resume, that shines, and that adds a lot of weight to your resume. I think that's about it. Did you have any questions for me, Siobhan?
I would just add in that one key part about networking that Jawad kind of alluded to, but didn't really spell out 100%, but I know we've both talked about this together, is a lot of the larger firms and mid-sized firms in Canada follow a very strict recruitment process for articling students. And that starts back when they're in law school. So when they're an L1 and L2, so they're a first year or a second year in law school, and they've already started the recruitment process for articling at that point. Now, for those of us coming in through the NCA process, we're kind of outside of that loop. We're not always eligible to enter that system because there's various requirements that you have to be at a Canadian university for them. Also, we're not necessarily here when the dates happen. Okay, so I know that some of the dates have changed this year for the recruitment process, so do make sure that you're looking at the Law Society of the province that you want to ultimately be called in. But here in BC, we also have the Vancouver Bar Association, so they're a subset of the Law Society, and they have their own recruitment deadlines in terms of articling. So make sure you're looking at the various different law societies, bar associations, check the dates. But as I say, that's mid-tier and large national firms, multinational firms. A lot of the smaller firms might not be in that process. So they might recruit at various different times of the year, but they don't necessarily advertise their positions. So for any of you who were on this call earlier, I gave you a little insight of one of those positions. They go by word of mouth, and that's why you need to network, because they don't need to put an advert out there, because they'll just reach out to their network and say, who do you recommend? Put somebody in touch with me. So that's part of the reason why networking is so key, because it automatically opens the window for you. So it's not going to result straight away in a position, but it opens the window for those opportunities to come towards you so that you hear about them. And then it's up to you to open the door. But at least the window is there so you know it's happening. So definitely network in all sorts of different ways. So Jawad mentioned, within your own communities, with your neighbors, in your local area, meeting other lawyers, so joining professional networks. As an NCA student, you can join the Canadian Bar Association for a ridiculously cheap price. I have a feeling it's like $20 or $40 for the year, which means you have access to all of their networking events. Most of them are free. Some of them have a price attached to them, but it's usually relatively low. But that's a great way to meet lawyers in various different practice areas. But you can also join professional societies outside of law. So you can meet business owners. If you play football, soccer, or you play cricket, join the cricket team, join the football team, join the soccer team. If you play tennis, go down the park and play tennis and get to know other people who are playing, because that will broaden your network, and you never know who knows somebody else. And that's the strangest thing, is you'll get referrals from all sorts of different things. And networking is a long-term game. It's the marathon, not the sprint on that one.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of lawyers who come from the subcontinent already know people in Canada. They either have a relative, or they have friends, or they have somebody else they know from their home country. And I think the starting point of your networking can be about reaching out to them and just building your network from there and asking them about your opportunities, discussing your plans with them and getting pointers from them. A lot of them, they don't necessarily have to be from the legal sphere. They can be from any sphere, but they will be able to introduce you to people. It's very important to realize that we are moving to a new country without having any roots in the community. And it's very important for us to establish those roots. And those roots are not going to happen by themselves unless you get out there. And some of the points that Siobhan mentioned about you don't necessarily have to be confined with lawyers. You can just go, literally anybody who you meet can be a potential point in your network or a member of your network. It's a very empowering experience as well, because the more you get involved in the society, the more relevant you feel, and the more, with that relevance comes confidence. And that confidence is key for you to move forward, because that sort of underpins the entire experience of your career. Absolutely.
Jawad was mentioning a minute ago about volunteer opportunities, and they can come from all sorts of different avenues. If you look on LinkedIn, I will share the post. I saw it earlier today, but there is an initiative in Ontario that's actually looking nationally. I think Sonia's nodding, she saw this too, where they're looking for volunteers to assist with various different COVID-related legal questions. And so even though you're not called here yet in Ontario or in Canada, you could be doing some of the research and working with somebody who is called on real life cases right now, which is going to give you that Canadian experience. So if you're not following me on LinkedIn, do follow me. I will share it later tonight for you so that you all see it. It popped up just as we were starting this call, so I haven't shared it yet. But it looks like a great initiative because you don't have to be like physically in downtown Toronto. You can be around and about, which right now is kind of key because we're still having to do social distancing for obvious reasons. But there's lots of different ones out there. If you do a search, use whatever search engine you use and just type in pro bono and the area that you live in. There's all sorts of things now. Some of those pro bono opportunities do come with a caveat that you do need to be either under the supervision of a Canadian law school, or you do need to be called here in Canada. But if you talk to a lot of them, there's an opportunity though that you could do legal research for them, and then you provide the legal research to one of the volunteers who can give legal advice. So talk to them, explore the different options available, because it may be something they haven't considered before. So
Absolutely.
You have to educate them a little bit.
I can actually add in that I am actually working for the very organization that you mentioned. I am acting as a volunteer for this organization called the National Canadian Lawyers Initiative, which is the organization that has been formed initially. It's a fairly recent organization, but they're massively ambitious. And what they're trying to do is that what initially started out to be an organization to help businesses in need of legal services during this pandemic has quickly snowballed into an organization that provides legal services to anyone without them having any economic qualification to be eligible to receive the help. So it can be it specifically encourages businesses or persons who are above the minimum threshold required for legal aid, but still cannot afford lawyers. There is a group for that, and you don't even have to be involved in legal work with them. I'm not doing any legal work with them for now. What I am doing is that I am helping them fundraise. I am heading a team of fundraisers, helping the organization raise funds for their activities. And through this process, I am getting to know lawyers. I am getting to know law students who are going to become lawyers. I'm getting to know philanthropists who donate to a legal cause. I am getting to know so many other useful contact points that I can perhaps later use, who will be a point in my career, a point in my network, So, and another useful person to follow would definitely be Siobhan, because Siobhan is a leader in her own field. She is championing the cause for internationally trained lawyers for as long as I've been on the lookout for any such point. She heads this organization, the Global Lawyers of Canada organization, and I think it is a great organization to be in touch with, basically because Siobhan and the rest of the GLC team manages to collect different informations that they find from different sources and share them on various platforms that they're in, like LinkedIn or Facebook. And through those resources, I actually got to know about NCLI from one of your posts. So there are other organizations like this who you can be in touch with. For example, you mentioned an organization where you can be, like when you can become a member for a ridiculously cheap amount of money.
Oh yeah, the Canadian Bar Association.
The Canadian Bar Association. I would also like to mention the Toronto Lawyers Association. because the Toronto Lawyers Association you can actually become a member for free. You can be a friend of TLA, and you can go into all of their events, and you can meet people. You know, this is before COVID. I used to attend a lot of their events, and I used to be I got to know a lot of law firm partners, a lot of associates from law firms, and various other different people, professors from universities, and they are now on my LinkedIn. They see me whenever I make a post, so that's very useful. At least I've been introduced to them, so that the next time I can tell them that, hey, I met you at so and so event held by Toronto Lawyers Association. Can I pick your mind on such and such topic? You know, so that really is a key.
Absolutely. I think it's a great tip, and I've shared a few links and various different things about networking and ways to build your brand, which Jawad was saying about writing. I've shared an example of his writing and a couple of places where you can write and get published. Little self-promotion here, because one of my fellow board members is secretly hiding in the background with his camera off, so I'm going to do some little promotion for us on GLC. You can also write for our blog. We'll happily write and publish things. We do have a bit of a backlog of people who have written for us recently, which is a great situation to be in. So we're just working our way through publishing all of those and sharing all of those. So if you are watching, I haven't forgotten you. I do have it in the background. Kenny and Kenny have it all there ready to go on that one. We talked about volunteering, but Jawad, what about other kinds of work experience that you can do whilst you're doing your NCAs, or whilst you're just finding your feet when you arrive in Canada? What kind of tips have you got there?
Well, there are a few things that you can do. Volunteering can be one of them. I think, you know, there are paid things that you can do, and then there is obviously the voluntary work. Amongst the paid things that you can do is that you can act as you can try to find a role as a legal assistant of a law firm, and that is you know, I know a lot of NCA students who are working as legal assistants, or who have had worked as legal assistants, and that gives you a great doorway into the legal community. That really adds to your resume, and it actually opens you. It actually makes you eligible to be hired on as an articling student later on by the partners of that law firm. You can also try to qualify as a paralegal in Canada, and you can try to find work as a paralegal. You can try to find a work as a legal content writer for law magazines, or any other sort of other, you know, publications. LexisNexis had a job that they advertised a few days back, inviting applications for as a legal content writer. There are many such things that you can do. This is all within the field of law. I was talking to someone who's in the board of GLC, and he told me that he was employed in a non-law field, and he was basically employed in finance by one of the banks, and that experience helped him a lot, because it opened up, it basically he got a lot of expertise in finance through that work. So when he made an application to get into financial law, that experience was heeded and was given importance, and actually ultimately weighed in to get him the job that he wanted to. So that really is important. If there is a particular field that you want to go to, then trying to do the work in that field is also going to strengthen your application. Here is a point that I missed. Amongst subcontinental lawyers, we do not have much of a tendency to specialize in narrow fields. That is not a trend in the subcontinent. That is very uncommon in the subcontinent. In fact, in my home jurisdiction, at least in my experience, I have seen that a tendency to specialize in a narrow field is frowned upon by the legal community as well as by clients as well, Because if a client who has come to me, I've had clients who've come to me for, at first they came to me for a corporate matter, and then they got divorced, and now they want to sue their wife. So he wants me to handle that work for them. And if I tell them no, then he might not stay here with his corporate work. So it really does, in the subcontinent, lawyers cannot really practice cannot narrow down their practice in narrow fields, and that is something that is quite the opposite in Canada. Here, lawyers tend to specialize in very narrow fields, and if you are a person who's very specialized in a very narrow field, then that is actually one of the ways that you can set yourself apart. Because if somebody needs expertise in that narrow field, and if you're the only one who's a service provider in that narrow field, then you've literally got all the business in that field. So that is a cultural difference here that I wanted to talk about. So that is something to be heeded when you're looking to gain some work experience or the other as you're going through your NCA or your bar requalification process. Other things that you can do amongst the voluntary work that you can do is you can go to legal aid organizations. There are also processes for doing summer internships. They are mainly done by students of local law schools, and you can make an application as well. That gives you a valuable insight into what working here is like in a law firm. Another thing that I wanted to talk about, and probably I missed out on, and Siobhan sort of pointed this out, that it's very important for us to be able to be cognizant of the fact that we need to establish our own brand. We need to establish a trust element. We need to establish that we can be trusted by a Canadian employer, because Canadian employers generally look for Canadian experience. And that is something that I've found all throughout. So for you to get some Canadian experience under your belt is extremely important. A lot of the times, the experience that you have gained elsewhere may not cut it for you. But the little bit of Canadian experience that you have may go a long way into establishing your credibility, because a lot of the positions here, and I think it was at one of the mentorship mentorship sessions that I heard this being said, around 60% of all the legal positions that are there are not even advertised. They are completely filled in through word of mouth and through the recruiter looking into his network. And that is what Siobhan was saying. So you will not even get to know about these positions unless you have a sufficiently broad network. So it really is important for us to be able to network and to build to cast our net wide.
Absolutely. So I think we've gone through all your main points. So before we open this up to questions from everybody, I'm going to very quickly introduce you to Kenny, who is on our board in Calgary in Alberta. And he just wanted to chime in with some of his tips and experience. And then we're going to open all of it up to your lovely questions. So get thinking what your questions are. By all means, type them into the comment box, and then we can come to you in kind of some form of order, so we're not jumping around too much between different parts of the journey. And then we'll be over to you guys. So Kenny, let's hand over to you. Hang on, we got to unmute you first though, Kenny. There you go. You're still silent. I think your microphone's not on. Come on, work your magic. You're a tech guru, you can do this.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Perfect.
You guys missed out on all the good bits of what I was gonna say.
Right, we'll take the cliff notes. We'll take the highlights.
Okay, so 3 things I would talk about that Jawad already mentioned. For international trained lawyers, I have three things to say. Network, network, network. That's it. And I'll tell you why. As I come from Nigeria, sometimes you get shy, you don't want to hustle. You want to let people bring work to you because like in my family, I'm the first lawyer. You can imagine how much pro bono work I did because everybody was like, oh, you're a lawyer, tell me about this. Even if I didn't know about it, I went and read about it. You know, well, coming to Canada, nobody would come to you. You need to go to them. And networking as an international trained lawyer looking for articles, people are out there hustling to do this. You cannot slack. People are going for coffees. People are emailing people on LinkedIn and private emails. You cannot slack. You need to do it. Jawad talked about going to networks that you already know, like your people from the same country, whether playing sports. Everything is an opportunity. And that's just because you're seeking articles. And I'll tell you, it's still important even when you get articles. I articled in a big firm. So you can imagine, like Siobhan, you said, students getting from summer 1L, 2L. So you can imagine during articles, all these other articling students already had a relationship in the firm. I was the only one that didn't know anybody in the firm. So when work is being passed around, they pass it on to the people they know. So there you go again. I was hustling again, trying to look for work to do, trying to network with all the partners and all the senior associates, telling them that I could do the job just so that it could. So again, there was networking again, even as an articling student. And then guess what happens when you become an associate? You need to make your billable hours. You need to go back to those senior associates and partners, networking again so that they can give you work. It's all about relationship building. And guess what? When you become a partner, how do you think work comes into the firm? You're about networking with clients and everything. So your whole life is really about networking. So it's not something that Jawad is saying that you start now and end later. No, it drives your whole career. So the faster we get used to it, we international trained lawyers, the easier and the better it will be for us because you're going to be networking all your whole career. Okay, so that's the first thing. Secondly, he mentioned, Jawad mentioned, I think it was Daniel, you talked about I worked in a financial services firm. I came to Canada in 2007. I worked in supply chain for 8 years and doing contracts. Got called to the bar, worked in a firm for 1 year, and I was back out. I'm an in-house lawyer now because I already knew all these contracts that people were worried about. I was breathing and contracts were coming out of my ears. So I already got it. So when it was time to go in-house, I didn't, usually they say wait 3 to 5 years in a firm and then you'll get it and then you go in-house. I didn't need to wait that long because I was already working with lawyers when I was doing my supply chain role. So you're right. Whatever job you find yourself doing, do it well because that job might be what you will use in the future to progress your career. The people you meet in that job might be people that will progress your career later in life. That's my second thing. And the last thing I'll talk about is Jawad talked of your brand. So again, being international trained, no one really knows who we are. So being in a foreign country where people do not really understand either your jurisdiction. I mean, it's getting better now, trust me. People might not understand your jurisdiction or your accent or whatever. You only have one chance to make a good impression. So when you're then networking, trying to get a partner to give you work, the partner gives you work, better do a good job. Because if you don't, you're not getting another chance for him. Because he already has his buddies, the articling students that he knows, but he's maybe, you've come and networked so much, he's bought so many coffees for you, and he says, okay, let me give Kenneth something to do. And then he gives me something and I mess it up. He's not gonna come back to me. He'll just go back to his buddy that he knows. So building that brand is about doing a good job. You only have one chance. Other local lawyers have many chances. They had many chances during their summer years. We're already here as lawyers in our own countries. And then we come here and we have to be humble enough to start it over again, but please do a good job. If you don't do a good job, you might not have a second chance. And that's my spiel. Thank you.
Excellent spiel, as always. I love it when you chime in with these bits. It's so useful. And I love how you number them as well. 1, 2, 3. 3 easy steps. Just going to go back to very quickly before we answer your questions, because I noticed there were a couple of questions that we didn't quite cover. And it's what happens after you've done your NCAs, you're applying for your articles, and we very briefly touched on it. Then you've got to pass the bar. You've got to do the articling portion, which Jawad said is like an in-person, practical, hands-on every day. It's traditionally 10 months. Right now, I know Ontario has dropped it to 8 months because of COVID for certain individuals when they've applied for it. You can apply for an exemption to reduce the amount of articling time. That is dependent on each individual person and each individual law society. There are rules and regulations, so check the law society's website of the province you're going to be practicing in, because they will list it all out, all of the requirements. I can tell you that here in BC, if you don't have at least 5 years, you're getting 0 knocked off. So it's 5 years or more in BC. But as I said, every province is different. So you've got to do that. But at the same time, you also need to go and do the bar exams. Now in BC, it's called PLTC. It's a 10-week in-person full-time course with 2 3-hour open book exams at the end. They love open book exams here. But from experience, my own personal experience, I got to open my book once in 6 hours. There are so many questions and so little time. Really, you don't have time to look in the book. So you've got to know your material. And at the same time as doing that 10-week course, there are practical assessments of advocacy, writing, all sorts of different parts. So it's quite an intense 10 weeks. It's not wildly difficult. It's just intense because there's a lot of things being thrown at you and you're being pulled in different directions. But when you think about it, that's kind of what practice is like. So that's going to help you. In BC, you can't take those exams until you've secured an articling position. In Ontario, I know it's different. You can take the exams whilst you're looking for articles. In BC, you can't. Now, we have Eric Pye on the call. He's sitting there very quietly waving at you guys. He's involved with an organization called CPLED. CPLED is in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and I think there's somewhere else as well, Eric. Manitoba.
And Nova Scotia.
And Nova Scotia, there you go. And they actually have courses that can help you with the bar part of the exams in those provinces. So if you don't know Eric, contact him on LinkedIn, contact CPLED. If you're in one of those provinces, they should be able to help you out and get you started on that. And we may see CPLED in other places too, because they're working on expanding their outreach across that one. So that's just something to be aware of. They are the other hurdles you still have to get through. And as I say, every province is slightly different, so you really need to go to the Law Society website and look up what they say. And of course, the NCA exams are going to be online for this round. We don't know all the details yet, but what they have said is if you want to do the August exams, apply right now. I think the deadline is today or tomorrow. The deadline is to apply for them. It's pretty soon. It's very soon. So if you want
it's tomorrow.
So if you want to be included in the August round of exams, the first ones that are going to be online, don't miss the deadline, because they're not going to let you in after the deadline. You're going to have to wait till the next round. We don't know if that's going to continue after this round. We'll see. Who knows? You guys are the guinea pigs on that one. But who's got a question for us? I think, Zakir, you had a question.
I think my question was just answered by you. There isn't much we know about the exams right now. But one of the things that really made me defer for August, I wanted to appear for the August exams, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to travel from where I am. My nearest exam venue is New Delhi in India. But even the way things are right now, it's very hard to predict whether I'd be able to travel by that time.
Zakir, can I just chime in? I have actually seen somebody share an email that they sent to NCA, and NCA responded back. They actually asked the same question that you asked me, whether they would be able to sit for the exams from the comfort of their homes. And the NCA responded that so long as you have internet facilities, you can basically sit for the exam from wherever you want.
Okay,
so
that's
you
good
you don't necessarily have to go to India to sit for your exams. So long as you have a good and strong internet connection at home, you will be able to sit for it from there.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. That helps.
I think the implication is, well, you need to have like the technology to do it. So there might be some requirements around the actual, like, can your computer, your device use the software that they're going to be using? All that information is going to come out, you know, hopefully in the next little while. And they are running on a treadmill like a hamster, super, super fast, trying to get all this in place because this is new to them. They've never done this before. They're trying to respond and they're having to build a whole system behind them in place. So they're trying to work out numbers and logistics. So, but yes, they have indicated that you can pretty much do it from anywhere this time. So that's a bonus. No flights for anybody.
Yeah, if I can just chime in, I started my new job with CPLED on June 1st. I had a meeting with somebody from NCA the following week, and they were in the process at that point of signing the contract with the provider for their online examinations. So they really are hamstering like crazy. Yes, and she did say that the exams would be you could do it from home. As long as you had, as Siobhan said, the technology and the bandwidth on your internet. She also indicated that more than likely, this would be something that they would continue doing going forward for future exams. Don't take my word for that right now, but the benefits of doing it online, and once they've opened that box, it's really hard to close that box. So more than likely, because it's going to save people money for traveling, it's going to save probably 10 to 14 days in marking time, because we don't have to wait for exams to be mailed around the world, and various other reasons that more than likely it will continue.
Excellent. There we go. Insider knowledge. This is why you guys
Thank
show
you.
momentum.
That's invaluable. Thank you.
All right. Who else has a question? Any kind of question. It can be on anything we've talked about or anything that you think might be relevant. I promise we are nice people. We're not scary. Apart from maybe Eric. Eric might be scary. That's it. If we don't have any questions tonight, guys, thank you so much for all joining us tonight. Thank you for listening to Jawad. Thank you, Kenny, for stepping in and sharing your points. Thank you, Eric, for sharing some sneaky inside tips. That's great. Super useful to know. Do stay in touch with all of us. As I say, you can, by all means, find me on LinkedIn, comment, just put in your comment. Like when you send me a message request, just tell me this is how you found me, just so I know who you are, because I'm nosy and it stops me having to necessarily go and stalk your LinkedIn profile and work out who you are. And ask us questions. That's what we're here for. We're here to share our experiences. We've been through what you're all going through. You don't have to do this alone. Even though it's a very solo experience, you don't have to go it alone. We're here. And for those of you who missed it, we are launching a new chapter in Saskatchewan this month. We are in talks to open another chapter down the eastern seaboard. More details on that coming very soon. So if you do know people or you are based in one of those locations, just know there's going to be some new friends there for you to help start building that network. Have a lovely evening. We will see you all next Thursday for our next session, which is going to be fabulous as always. And I look forward to getting all of your questions then.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.